whenever you would like to start.
Shalom, everybody. My name is Rivka Glatz. I was born in Hungary in 1937, and I was born with the name Veronika Zuzana. In Hungarian, it's Veronika Zsuzsanna. The Hungarian is very different dialect from any other language. I grew up in a family, two very Orthodox families got together. My mother is one of 8 children. My father is one of 13 children. So you can imagine what large families we had. All of them grew up to be adults. Everybody was married. They had children. I had cousins, all ages. I had an older brother who is almost 8 years older than I am. And I will show you a family picture of us in Hungary. This is kind of a happy picture with my mother, father, and my brother and I. And there is a little bit more formal portrait of the 4 of us in Hungary. Well, the war broke out in 1939. And it went into Poland, it went to Slovakia, it went all around, they went into Austria, the Germans. The Hungarians were allied with the Germans. So the Jewish organizations in Hungary could not even fathom that anything will happen to them, because they were such loyal citizens. They fought in World War I with them, they lost the war in World War I together with the Germans, but they were really honest citizens, and they felt that things like that they are hearing is never going to happen in Hungary. Well, lo and behold, first it started with the Hungarian Nazi Party. The Hungarian Nazi Party was, I'll remember the name in a minute and I'll tell you. The Hungarian Nazi Party was as bad, if not worse, than the Nazis. They were called the Arrow Cross. That was their name. Immediately started out with Jews are not allowed to be doctors, they are not allowed to be doctors, they are not allowed to teach, they are not allowed to practice any of their professions. I tell you, the Hungarian Jewry was very well educated, from musicians to writers to doctors to lawyers to scientists. In every field they excelled. All of them were kicked out. 2 scientists arrived in the United States, and they were the ones who helped fix the atom bomb in the US. They managed to escape. But the rest, really, there was no place to go. Israel didn't exist. No, all the countries were at war. America didn't want to receive any refugees. And if they arrived by boat into Palestine, which was ruled by the British Empire, they were immediately taken and sent to Cyprus, to concentration camp there. So it was very, very, very tough. And finally some Jews decided that they have to get an organization and they have to find Eichmann, because Eichmann was sent by the Nazis to do the final solution, not just to the Hungarian Jews, but to the Jews of the world. Eichmann arrived in Budapest, which is the main city in Hungary, the most beautiful city, and he put himself right in the most gorgeous synagogue in Budapest. He opened an office. A group of Jewish men got together and they decided to take the courage and speak to Eichmann. The person that spoke to Eichmann was Rudolf Kastner. In Hebrew, his name is Yisrael Kastner. This is his picture. Kastner spoke German fluently, better than Eichmann spoke German. And he went in and he said to Eichmann, he bluffed, that show the world that you are not killing all the Jews, and the world will pay you, and the Jewish community will pay you. he felt that this is what they can do the best. No such organization was in the world. World Jewry is going to pay you. But they started collecting money from some of the wealthy Jews, Kastner and the group, in order to try to give the money to the Germans so that they can save some Jews. And with that money, there were about 300 Jews. First they started arguing that they should save 1 million people, and then it went down to 1,690 some odd people. That's basically women and children and older people, because the younger men, like my father, who was 42 years old, were taken to forced labor camp, from which unfortunately he never returned. When he collapsed out of hunger and had no more strength to stand on his feet, they shot him dead. And I know it because his brother-in-law was in camp with him, and he was a witness to what has happened. So it's a very sad story. But Kastner really did a wonderful job. And finally, he came to an agreement with Eichmann that this group of people, and they took from every faction of Jewish society, from the Orthodox to the liberal to the Zionists to the non-believers and orphan children in this group. And Eichmann promised that they'll take us to Portugal or Spain. Well, they gathered this group of Jews, put them on cattle cars, no seats, hundreds of people in one cabin, and the train went out from Budapest. The train went out, and I can tell you that we did not arrive to Spain and Portugal. We arrived to Bergen-Belsen in Germany. It's a famous concentration camp. It wasn't an annihilation camp. Of course, they starved the people to death. And in this camp, Anna Frank died with her sister from starvation. So horrendous how many people died from starvation in this camp. Our group were taken to Bergen-Belsen, and in Bergen-Belsen they shoved us into this barracks. The beds were made out of wood, and one slept on top of the other, and crowded, and you know, no sanitation. Buckets were the bathrooms. On the train also, can you imagine, the most private thing that we do is when we go to the bathroom. We don't need observers. And we were on the train for quite a few days, and that was the way people had to use the buckets. And other people lifted up something so nobody can see. Very, very humiliating. I was a child. I was 6.5 years old. My brother was 14. He was already after bar mitzvah. We were separated because he was with the men and I was with the women. And we didn't know whether we'll come out alive from Bergen-Belsen. Every day they made us stand in line. They were counting us. Morning, afternoon, with German shepherds barking, with guns on their hands, ready to shoot. And the guards at top who were looking all over the camp, zooming the lights on us. And that's how we lived for 7 months. The war started to get to its end, and I guess Eichmann decided. Kastner remained in Budapest, and he talked to Karl Lutz, who was the ambassador from Switzerland to Hungary, begging him that if he can get these people out of Bergen-Belsen, would he allow them to enter Switzerland? And Karl Lutz worked very hard, and he got the permission for us to enter Switzerland. Well, I don't have to tell you, this is a picture when we arrived in Switzerland. We started with cattle cars, and then they put us into regular trains. This lady here with the coat is my mother. She is my mother. And these are children who were happy that finally we are out of there. We arrived in Switzerland in December 44, I apologize, 1944. And it was like going from hell to heaven. I will show you pictures. You probably have seen the pictures of the concentration camps. I want to show you pictures of the hotel looked like this. This is on the side. And this is what it looked like. I'm sorry. This is what it looked like from the air. It's in the Alps. Gorgeous hotel. And we didn't know what it was because it was empty. But they managed to put all the refugees and the mothers there primarily and the older people, and the children were taken immediately to the mountains for recuperation and for feeding and so forth. So they were very nice to us, very, very nice. Many years later, my husband and I went back to Switzerland. I needed to see what this, about this hotel, and I said to my husband, I don't know. I remember it to be very large, but I was a little girl. Maybe it's just a small hotel and it looked so big to me, but it was a very large hotel. And it turns out that this was the hotel for European royalty. They used to come during the winter for winter sports and for fun. And we found this plaque in the back of the hotel with a tree planted around it. In 4 languages it says, "In remembrance of the Jewish refugees who stayed here and of those who were not admitted to enter Switzerland during World War II, we shall not forget." They were honest. Well, we were in Switzerland, and I want to show you one more picture of Erica. I always show her. I want you to look at her carefully. Does she look like an enemy of somebody? Harmful? 1.5 million children like her were taken and annihilated in Auschwitz. It's hard to fathom or imagine what we lost and what was taken away. Hungarian Jewry were 800,000 Hungarian Jews in Hungary. Within 2 months, 550,000 Jews were annihilated in Auschwitz. It was the most rapid annihilation of the Jews through the entire war. So it was horrendous. Erica will always be remembered, and it's hard to imagine that people like this were taken and murdered. What kind of a monster can take human beings looking like her or not looking like her, children, and shoving them into gas chambers and into the ovens? Unbelievable. I showed you the picture of Kastner, and I showed you the picture of my mother standing at the train. And I have to tell you of something very touching. When I got married, I was about to get married. I was engaged already. I was still 19 years old. And my mother said to me, "Rivka, I have something to give you from Hungary." I looked at her. I said, "Mom, what did we have? We didn't take anything. Now I have something I want to give you." And she came out and she gave me a parchment rolled up. I opened the parchment and it was the content of a mezuzah. She said to me, "When I knew that they'll come for us, I took the mezuzah off the door and I sewed the parchment into the lining of my coat. And now, I want you to have it because one day you'll have a house and you're going to use it. And I did. And it was a 5.5-inch parchment, and a rabbi friend of ours bought me this, and this was hanging inside the house. We did not hang it outside. I feared. When my daughter got married and they had a house, I bought a new casing for it, and it's hanging in their house. And one of these days, she's going to hand it over to one of the children, and it will go from one generation to the next. The thought that out of all the things that we had in our house, she took this. Because when they came for us, they ordered us out of our house. We put on our knapsack. In the knapsack, my mother prepared utensils to eat, toothbrush, a little soap, a towel, a tiny blanket, and a little pillow, and a change of clothes. And when we got out of the house, I will never ever forget this. They took a piece of board, and at an angle, they hammered it to the door. It was yours, but now it's ours. It's in bright day theft. Not just to us, but to every Jew that they went to their house. Just imagine that somebody comes to your house that you bought, that you live in. Your palace, no matter how poor or how rich you are, it's yours. And somebody comes and says, no, it's no longer yours, it's ours. And no sooner do you leave, they take it over. So just to tell you very briefly that from Switzerland, we went after 10 months, the British allowed us into Palestine. And we came to Palestine. We were separated, my brother in one kibbutz, I was in another kibbutz, my mother in Haifa working. But in Israel, we learned to love and not to hate. And that's a very important thing. I was in a kibbutz by myself for 3 years, from the age of 8 till the age of 11. My mother got married. She remarried a gentleman from Hungary who lost his wife and 2 daughters. And my middle name in Hungarian was his daughter's first name. And he was a very loving father. So we remember him with a great deal of love, just like we remember our mother. And really from nothing, but we lived in peace. We were there to witness the establishment of the State of Israel. We were awakened at night as kids in the kibbutz to let us know that we have a country. And somebody said, Haifa was conquered, and I started crying and said, why are you crying, Rivka? I said, I'm crying because now I don't have a mother. And he says, we are the ones who conquered Haifa, not the Arabs. So I started laughing, it was fun. But we didn't have much, but we had love from every adult. You could feel how the adults in the street loved the children. And I knew that I was always safe. No matter where I went, if something would have happened to me, an adult would come to my aid. It's a very nice feeling after leaving Hungary. I went back to Hungary only once, and I have no intention of ever setting foot there. Neither would I set foot in Germany. I don't blame the young Hungarians now. I don't blame the young Germans now. A lot of them have a big burden on their shoulders of what has happened, and they are sorry for it, and I understand. And of course, I don't blame them. But it's not comprehensible how cruel they were during the war. Thank you for listening to my story. I appreciate it. And I say again, Shalom velehitraot. Thank you very much.